Everyone has that one wild tale that they like to pull out of their back pocket when they're at a party. Well, this collection of seriously jaw-dropping stories is proof that the truth is stranger than fiction, even when it's something like our last story about a pimple popping gone horribly wrong, but also right. When I was 19, I worked at a place that gave Segway rides. It was a closed course with a guardrail on the outside, a loop on the inside of that, and an obstacle course on the inside of the loop. Our training was they have to ride the outside course first to gain experience, then they could try the obstacle course. As they rode around the outer loop, the facilitators had to lightly hold onto the handles in case the riders, who were primarily kids, did something stupid so we could catch them. Well, on my first day, one kid wanted to ride it himself so badly. He was screaming and yelling at me to let him go. I tried to explain to the 10-year-old that I can't do that until he gains more control. Well, he didn't like that answer. He says it one more time. I want to ride by myself. Then he punches me square in the face. As a reaction, I let go to grab my glasses. The kid leans forward to take off. Segways can go up to 12 miles per hour, which can feel really fast on such a small course. He lost control and slammed onto the guardrail, did a full front flip over the handles, and landed with his weight across the rail. The Segway fell to the ground, and the kid lay motionless on the rail. Me and his mom ran up to see if he was okay. He starts crying, his mom starts screaming at him for punching me in the face, and I'm a wreck thinking I was going to get fired on my first day. Well, we pulled security footage to show that I wasn't in the wrong. Mom took the kid to the hospital because he had major pain. Apparently, he hit it hard enough that he broke a couple of ribs. The mom ended up sending us an email apologizing for her kid. That was my most stressful first day ever. Wow. I love when instant karma comes calling. Although I'd be horrified too if something like this happened on my first day at a new job, I'd find it really hard not to laugh in this kid's face. I had a stalker during high school. She saw some pictures of me on social media and just decided that I was her new boyfriend. Although I'd never seen her in real life and we only texted for like 2 days or so. She would skip school just to be in front of my school right as I finished class. One day, she got my number. I still don't know how, and she would call me 24/7. I had to turn off my phone while on a class trip just because it wouldn't stop ringing. The next morning, I had approximately 100 missed calls. My classmates thought it was hilarious. When she found out my address, I had enough, so I called her and told her to stop. She cried like crazy and threatened to take her own life. However, she wasn't the brightest. She sent me a video where she filmed herself sitting on her window frame and saying her life didn't make any sense without me, so she was gonna jump out of the window. Well, she lived on the first floor, so she jumped like 6 feet at most and pretended to be dead. I asked her how she could send the video if she was dead. That's when she claimed to be the emergency doctor who had tried to save her life. I just blocked her on everything I could. If it's wrong to laugh at this kind of drama, I don't want to be right. This is the kind of thing that only the most delusional high school stalker can pull. I was walking to my car in the driveway to grab something. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 toddlers on the deck of my neighbor's above-ground pool. I called out and asked if anyone was watching them, because at the angle I was standing, I couldn't see the entire deck. They were getting closer to the ladder. I realized they were both in their clothes and not bathing suits. I blacked out. Don't even remember running over there. By the time I reached the pool edge, One of them was drowning right in the middle. I didn't even see her go in. I tried to jump over the edge and get a hold of her, but I couldn't reach. I started screaming at the top of my lungs for my neighbor. Luckily, she heard me and came out right away. She also started screaming. By this time, the kid's mom ran out too. I finally managed to jump up high enough to get into the pool and grab her arm to pull her out. It was crazy. If I hadn't gone out to my car at that exact moment, she'd be gone. I was having heart palpitations for like 3 hours after. The family did send me flowers, but it still haunts me. Whew. Talk about being in the right place at the right time. I don't know if I ever would be able to calm down again if I had gone through this. Thank goodness this guy was there, because what would have happened otherwise is way too awful to think about. During a time in my life when I was post-divorce, deep in debt, living paycheck to paycheck on an impossibly thin budget, I turned in all my airline miles for a free solo trip to Vegas. It started horribly. I had astigmatism and couldn't afford corrective lenses, so I went to the optical shop for a free pair of sample contacts so I could see the Strip in all its majesty. On my first day there, I put in the lenses and accidentally scratched my right eye. Overnight, it became painfully infected. I went to the clinic and was diagnosed with a huge corneal ulcer that threatened to permanently blind that eye. I was given antibiotics. I needed to be seen several more times because the injury was so severe. I had no insurance and no way to pay for this. The doctors were great, so I wasn't afraid of losing my eye, but the medical bills on top of my financial situation would have been devastating. I went to the Treasure Island Casino gift shop and bought a toy eye patch to cover the wound. Skull and crossbones, of course. Then I took the $20 I had in my pocket and went to work. I'm not a gambler, but I knew the video blackjack machines had the best odds. I built up small wins and had them cut down by losses, leaving me with only $5. I went for a walk and tried to get my head right. Tried again and lost that $5 too. I thought that was it. I was hopeless. I went to my bank's website, borrowed a $20 advance, and took it out at the ATM. I tried again. This time, things came together. I managed to grow that $20 into just over $500, enough to cover my bills. I stopped there, not wanting to press my luck further. The toy eye patch now hangs on my refrigerator, next to a magnet from the ophthalmologist's office. It's a great reminder of the time I gambled for mercy and won. Alright, I love this story, and I'm glad things worked out for this guy. But if that happened to me, I would have had to hitchhike out of Las Vegas after losing my life savings and going blind. Anyone else feel like their luck just doesn't work out this way? I was part of a robotics team my senior year of high school. Ended up winning in a regional competition in California and made it to the national in St. Louis, Missouri. 2 friends and I shared a hotel room and basically just hung out all night and played video games. Around the wee hours of the morning, maybe 2 a.m., I decided I'm not ready to call it a night and wanted to venture out into the street to walk around St. Louis. Upon opening the door, I hear something rip. Those sly chaperones did the old tape on the door trick to see who snuck out at night. Now, I was a well-behaved kid in high school. Didn't get around to drinking until after I had graduated, and never got in trouble at school. It being so early in the morning, my mind started racing, thinking I'd be in big trouble, and worrying so much about getting kicked from the team or being suspended. I woke one of my friends up and asked what to do, and he just brushed it off and went back to sleep. In my worried state, I proceeded to tear the tape off of every door on that floor. About halfway through, I start wondering, man, do we really have this many people on our team? I had a huge amount of tape after a while, and it did take a while since I was scared of waking anyone up. Finally, the deed was done, and I disposed of the baseball in some planter. By the time I get down to the lobby, I'm too tired to walk out and just hang by some grand piano that they have there. By morning, everyone is wondering who went out, and I just kept a straight face, not wanting to get caught. While we're having breakfast downstairs, I overhear someone talking about the missing tape. It turns out there was another team, an all-girls team on the same floor, who got in trouble before lights out for having a guy in their room. The whole thing was blamed on them. In the end, I fessed up to prevent them from getting in serious trouble, and had the lobby guy vouch for me that I was just hanging out downstairs, hammering out some tunes on the grand piano. When you're young, there's a feeling you get after you know that you're in trouble, but before you actually get into trouble. Does anyone else remember that, or is it just me? Either way, it's one of the worst types of dread you can get. But you know what? Good on this kid for both his genius idea and also for coming clean about it later. I was at my gate for a flight to see my grandparents, and I saw a girl from my school. Being a freshman in high school at the time, I was pretty much in love with every girl I saw, but I had had a special crush on this girl, Annie. She was one of the nicest and bubbliest people I had ever met. I never was that kid who was afraid of talking to girls, so I went over and shot the breeze with her while we were waiting for boarding. On the actual plane, she was all the way in the back and I was right over the wing, so I didn't see her during the actual flight, which was good because I'm terrified of airplanes. On an airplane, I have to be able to see the horizon and the earth out the window. I have to know what's going on. I will sit in a window seat and grab the armrests hard enough that it's like I'm trying to fly the airplane through them for the entire flight. My arms and necks always ache for a day or so afterwards. If we are going through clouds or it's at night over the ocean, I flip out and go into an anxiety attack and completely shut down. So I'm doing my usual thing, trying to fly the plane through the armrests and staring intently through the window, while trying not to make any noises or freak out the people next to me. The flight was somewhat bad because it was at night and there were clouds everywhere, and whoever was on the window seat on the other side of the plane had closed the window, so I couldn't see the horizon or the ground if the plane turned left. So basically the worst experience. Plus, I had to go to the bathroom. I have literal nightmares about airplane bathrooms. No windows. I knew that modern planes all have this computer software called Airborne Collision Avoidance System. Essentially, it uses radar to tell if a plane is too close to another plane and makes it automatically dive if it thinks it's too close and might crash. I was so scared of flying that I basically studied everything that could possibly happen. And the Airborne Collision Avoidance System happened to malfunction on that flight. While I was peeing, I screamed in terror. Luckily, I wasn't the only one screaming. The plane goes into a nosedive. I freak out and zip up too quickly, causing myself to scream in pain again. I was the only one this time. The pilot had corrected the plane by this point, so I clean myself up and sneak back into my seat while everyone is distracted by the PA message telling them what happened. I ran into Annie a few days later, and we were all like, weird. We saw each other on that flight. The dive thing was weird, yeah? She says, yeah, some guy was screaming in the bathroom, and he kept on screaming. It kind of creeped me out. And I just said, yeah, that's weird, and changed the subject. I will never let her know it was me. As far as nightmare scenarios go, I almost died in a plane crash with my crush, but instead she heard me shriek in terror is right up there. Hands up if you would have just preferred the plane crashed. Back in the 1990s, I worked at an engineering supply shop. It was called Cogs Unlimited, and it was basically a huge warehouse with thousands of different types of cogs and other equipment. My job was to answer the phone and take the orders, then pass that on to the other guys who would locate the correct shelf and retrieve the parts to be sent to the buyers. Anyway, our phone number was similar to the phone number of a Santa phone service. Basically, kids call the number and talk to a voice actor playing Santa. The problem is we would often get kids calling our number, expecting it to be Santa, but instead are greeted by an unenthusiastic greeting of Cogs Unlimited. At first, I would just let them know that they had the wrong number, but as it got closer to Christmas, the calls became more and more frequent. So, if it was a slow day and I got a call from a kid expecting Santa, I would just play the role of Santa and ask what they want for Christmas, tell them they're on the good list, etc. Unless the kid was rude. That's when I'd do some real damage. I remember one annoying little brat who called and demanded an unreasonable amount of presents. As Santa, I let him know that he's on the bad list and will only be getting coal, and that I've sent some of my elves over to his house to hide in the garden and scare him. A few minutes after I hung up, I received a phone call from his furious mother, demanding to know why I told her child all those bad things. I told her we just sell cogs, and that she's got the wrong number, and I never heard from her again. This is incredible. My wrong numbers are never this funny. Must have felt so good to be able to say, sorry, wrong number, when the mom called back. When I was in the 4th grade, my teacher made all the students make a poster about conservation. Naturally, I went to the library, typed in conservation, and picked a random topic to match the theme. That just so happened to be surface mining, or strip mining. I worked on the poster for a couple days, and when I finished, I thought, wow, I did a great job on this poster. I went downstairs to show my parents my awesome conservation poster and about how surface mining was bad for the environment and how it needs to stop. Instead of praise, which is what I was expecting, I received silence from my mother and the angriest glare I have ever seen from my father. He blows up yelling about how surface mining isn't bad and how could I make a poster like that? Well, it turns out my dad was a surface miner and I didn't know it. Yikes. Imagine getting owned by your own kid that hard. I mean, I'd be mad too. But luckily, no teacher is ever going to make a kid do an assignment about how terrible funny YouTube videos are for the world. At least I hope. This might seem silly, but I experienced a really bad string of misfortune in my life, and it all had to do with the movie Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol. I think maybe I just wasn't meant to see it. I really wanted to go see it in theaters, so I asked my girlfriend to go with me. I was in the 10th grade and we had been dating for like 5 or 6 months. I kid you not. As the preview ends and the movie is about to begin, my girlfriend decides that this is the best time to lean over and start the whole, look, I don't think that this is going to work out thing. She broke up with me right then and there. We just kind of left the theater after that. No Ghost Protocol. The second time, I went back to the theater with some friends. They decided to treat me to a night out after I had been so suddenly dumped by my ex. Well, after actually making it through the previews this time, the movie begins. We're sitting there watching for about half an hour when the fire alarm goes off. Everyone in the theater gets up a little confused and proceeds to leave through the emergency exit. Some jerk had pulled the fire alarm, and the entire theater was at the box office trying to get refunds. The line for refunds was ridiculous, so we just left. The third and final time I tried to watch this godforsaken film, I was at a close friend's house almost a full year later. His mom had cooked spaghetti for dinner, and we decided to put the movie on to watch while we ate. I was just saying, man, I seem to have some bad luck with this movie. But I didn't get a chance to tell my story. My friend's stepdad started choking on the spaghetti. Like, really choking. We had to call an ambulance, and he ended up going to the hospital. My friend and I waited at his house after being assured by the paramedics that he'd be alright. And yet again, I didn't finish the movie. I've officially decided it's for the best if I just never try to watch Ghost Protocol again. Oof. Now, this one hurts. Why does it hurt? I just happen to think that Ghost Protocol is one of the best Mission Impossible movies ever made. But I guess some things just aren't meant to be. I found this massive pimple on my husband's arm. But even though I squeezed the heck out of it, nothing happened. We ended up seeing a dermatologist who referred us to a surgeon. There was something in there all right, but to our horror, it was not a pimple. The surgeon did some tests and came back with a diagnosis of Merkel cell carcinoma, an incredibly rare and aggressive form of skin cancer. They did a biopsy, cleaned out a larger area of his arm, and then he had 5 weeks of radiation in 2009. It hasn't returned. He was told he was cancer-free and he no longer needed to return to the oncologist periodically a few months ago. Then his doctor told him the only other patient he had who had gotten Merkel cell had found it in his jaw. They took it out, did a bunch of radiation and such, followed it up with a long, expensive facial reconstruction surgery. A year later, he went in for a checkup and it had metastasized all over his body. He had about a 5% chance of surviving. That's how aggressive it is. Yet, my husband is cancer-free today. Luck can be such a weird and fickle thing. This almost makes me change my mind about those couples that pop each other's pimples, considering this lady probably saved her husband's life by drawing attention to it. But then again... Alright, so that's all that we have for you today. But please subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date on all kinds of wild and weird stories from the internet that we bring to you. And be sure to like this video so that we know that we're doing a good job and it just feels great. Until next time.